Here's Stankie.
What's up everybody, another beautiful day in Azeroth, and here's a quick guide to Mythic Plus Mist of Tirna Scithe. Went over important trash abilities and boss mechanics. Night Elves, Taurens, Regular and High Mountain, Druids and Castlegar Herbalists can interact with a wall at the start of the dungeon, and a buff room with funky shrooms. Shrooms gives you 10% primary stat or stamina for 10 minutes, as well as a respawn point after first and second boss, so you don't have to corpse run for an hour. Notable trash before the first boss. The Drust Spite Claws leap at faraway players, dealing a ton of damage in a 4-yard area, and applies a bleed. You can bait this by having everyone stack up except one range. Range will need some tender love and defensives. Also spawns a swirl on the ground when they die. Swirls are bad. Should interrupt Drust Harvester's Harvest Essence, deals a bunch of AoE damage, and Interrupter's Spirit Bolt if you have any spare stops or kicks. When Soul Cleaver gains Hand of Throws, stun, crowd control, or tank kite it to avoid it healing too much. Healers make sure to dispel their soul split from the tank as often as possible. The Tirnan Villagers targets tank with a frontal cone, which disorients players hit. Aim it away from the group or chase your DPS with it when they've popped DPS cooldowns. Targeted by Overgrowth get stunned and need to be broken out, so make sure to run into melee if you get targeted by this. When you've slapped them down to 20%, they become your friend, and restores 5% of your health and mana per sec. So do make sure to bask in the glory of the tree a bit. And the Drust Bowbreaker casts Furious Thrashing whenever they reach 50% health, which deals a massive amount of damage over 6 seconds. So you want to avoid having multiple Bowbreakers hit 50% at the same time. Also spawns puddles under players' feet that deals damage and slows you. Puddles are bad. Now for the first boss, Ingra Maloch. 2 boss fight. While Droman is hostile, Ingra takes 80% reduced damage. You want to focus down Droman the tree down to 20% to remove Ingra's mind control. Doing so also increases Ingra's damage taken by a mere 200% for 15 seconds. You want to make sure you have DPS cooldowns for this. Gotta figure the pad! Now Ingra will continuously spam Spirit Bolt on random targets, so make sure to interrupt these to minimize overall damage and to be able to move Ingra. When Droman is active, tanks make sure to aim their cone away from the group. 4-second disorient if hit. And during Tears of the Forest, players spawn a bunch of swirls around them, which deal a massive amount of damage on impact and spawns puddles. Ingra will occasionally cast Repulsive Visage, an uninterruptible group-wide fear that lasts for 3 seconds. Do position yourself so you don't get feared into puddles. Following the first boss, you get the Mistcaller's Maze. Goal is to find the right path by using your brain, or a weak aura, to solve it as you go. In each room of the maze, there's 4 pillars each, next to a portal or path, if you will. Pillars show a symbol when a player is near them. It can be a flower or a leaf. These can also be either full or empty, and can be with or without a circle around them. So you need to find the odd man out. So for example, you can have 2 leaves, 2 flowers, all full, but only one of them is without a circle around them. Then that's the path to success. And if you pick the wrong portal, you get sent back to the start of the maze for a walk of shame. Haha, you done goofed it now. Noob. Now each room has a set of mobs in them. The Mist Veil Defender casts Mist Ward, which spawns a giant blue puddle on the ground when the cast goes off. Impact itself doesn't do damage, only the puddle does. But it does a lot of damage. It also reduces enemies' damage taken by 30% if they stand in it. So tanks, beware. Will also charge or expel a target, knocking them back. Avoid flying into the puddles. Make sure to interrupt Mistveil Shaper Bramblethorn Coat. Can also be purged. The Mistveil Stalker applies a nasty bleed to random targets. Healers beware. The Mistveil Tender cast Nourish the Forest. Make sure to interrupt it or purge. Stingers charge a random target and applies a dot that explodes in an 8-yard area. Don't hug your friends with this. And the Mistveil Guardian gains 3% damage per nearby ally and has an anime slash tank buster. Tanks, beware! Now depending on what path you get, you can get different mini-bosses during the maze. The Matriarch spawns a pool of radiance underneath it that heals the mob for a ton. Tanks, you want to quickly move it out of the pool. Also does a stacking tank buster shred armor. And the Gorge Gullet Frogger targets the tank with a frontal tongue slap. Avoid getting jumped on by the frog and avoid standing in the big green circle around it. Now for the second boss, we have Mistcaller. When boss reaches 70, 40 and 10%, an intermission event starts, which works like the previous maze. And the boss takes no damage during this. Several Mistcaller images spawn, each with a flower or leaf symbol above their head that can be either full or empty and with or without circles. So you want to check if there's a unique feature among the symbols, like one without a circle or one that's full, etc, etc. Nuking down the correct clone ends the intermission, defeating the wrong one nukes the party. Throughout the fight, boss casts Patty Cake on tank, which needs to be interrupted or tank gets disoriented. Easiest to have tank always interrupt us, as DPS can be away dealing with mechanics. When the Mistcaller casts Freeze Tag, spawn a little fox that fixates on a player and will deal near lethal damage and stun anyone within 8 yards of it if they reach the fixated player or somebody jumps into them. Now you can crowd control these, so trap, slow, kite. And the boss will cast Dodgeball, targeting each player's location with a blue arrow and fires out balls in their direction. Don't take balls to the face. Especially beware of this during intermission, as you might be away from boss. Pretty silly way to die. Notable trash before the last boss. Spinemaw Staghorn have 2 high priority casts that needs to be interrupted. Stimulated Resistance puts an absorb on all nearby Gorms, and Stimulated Regeneration heals nearby mobs a ton. They also cast Acid Nova, a 60-yard AoE that deals a ton of damage and increases nature damage taken by 20%. And the Acid Gullet debuffs players with Volatile Acid, which deals a ton of nature damage over 8 seconds in a 5-yard area. Up defensives and healers, perhaps think about starting to consider possibly throwing them a heal. Beware of the Gorger's Acid Globule Swirl. Deals a ton of damage and knocks you back, more often than not all the way off the edge, and you die. Swirl bad? And Reavers inflict a poison dot when they charge players. This spell, if possible. The last boss, Tred'ova. Throughout the fight, boss will spawn swirls underneath all players, and these swirls move. Now as the fight goes on, boss tries to use AI to predict where you're going and how you dodge these. So if you're not paying attention, it's very easy to find yourself running on top of the swirl rather than away from it. So try not to run around like headless chicken. When Tred'ova casts Mind Link, the tank gets tethered to other players, dealing a lot of ticking shadow damage. Move 40 yards away from tank to snap the tether. You want to aim to always have tank and the rest of the group on opposite sides of the boss to make this faster. Accelerating incubation causes 4 adds to spawn and fixate random players. Slow, stun, knock, and kite to keep them away. They also drop puddles on the ground when they die. When boss casts Coalescing Poison, it tries to pull players in and deals lethal damage when the cast is done. And when the boss reaches 70% and again at 40%, an intermission starts. Boss snails its way to the middle of the arena and gains an absorb and channels consumption, spawning large swirls all over the place. Swirls are bad. Party also takes a ton of ticking damage during consumption. Nuke down the absorb to interrupt consumption to end the intermission. That's pretty much it for Mists of Tirna Scithe. Hope it helps you all in Season 1. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if you have any questions at all about the dungeon. If you want to help support my channel, check out my Patreon, Twitch, or YouTube membership, where you can gain access to the Stankie Discord, shoutouts, and videos, among other things. Don't forget the usual stuff: like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It really helps me out. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.